We're live in 5, 4, 3.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Founders Table, Amazon's new thought leadership series created specifically for early-stage entrepreneurs and small business owners to build community, share ideas, and draw inspiration. You'll hear from different experts across the series, which can help you innovate, launch, and grow your business. My name is Abby Melko, and I'm a manager of small business partnerships at Amazon. Most of my experience comes from 20 years of service in the U.S. Navy. I'm a retired Navy chief, combat veteran, and veteran advocate. And during my time at Amazon, I've remained committed to driving positive outcomes for entrepreneurs and small business owners. I'm so excited to be here at our first Founders Table event. This is for you, the entrepreneurs and small business owners, so we invite you to get engaged. Make sure you know how to use the chat function to share comments. Sound good? Can I get a thumbs up? You can share your emoji game in the chat. Wow, lots of emojis, nice. One housekeeping note, Founders Table is a live webcast. This event will be recorded and shared on the Amazon Small Business Academy portal at smallbusiness.amazon. And here's a quick look at our agenda. We'll kick things off with our fireside chat, how to navigate your business in today's uncertain economic times, followed by a spotlight case study with San Francisco-based small business, Nana Joe's Granola. And then, in about 45 minutes, you'll join Brain Date, a small group discussion with your peers on a topic of your choice. A facilitator will fuel the discussion. Then we're back here on the main stage for Ask Me Anything with our speakers. Feel free to submit questions at any time using the Q&A function. Members from the Amazon team will be reviewing them in advance. Watch your screen to see what's coming up next. Again, Ask Me Anything questions are submitted via the Q&A function. Emojis shared via chat are a form of virtual applause for our speakers. We encourage your participation as each of you has a seat here at Founders Table. Our first Founders Table story takes place here in the Bay Area with business maven Sarah Fryer, CEO of Nextdoor and co-founder of the nonprofit Ladies Who Launch. Before joining Nextdoor, Sarah served as Chief Financial Officer at Square and Senior Vice President of Finance and Strategy at Salesforce. She's taken 2 companies public, first Square and most recently Nextdoor. Early in her career, she worked on Wall Street, at Goldman Sachs, and at McKinsey in both London and South Africa. We caught up with Sarah in San Francisco's Dogpatch neighborhood to talk about what it takes to navigate a business during economic uncertainty. Let's watch. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Abby. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Our very first Founders Table event. We're so excited to bring small businesses together through the series to provide support and community to one another. I'm curious, as CEO of Nextdoor, can you share your vision of Nextdoor and the importance of community?
Absolutely. So Nextdoor is all about community. Our purpose is to cultivate a kinder world where everyone has a neighborhood to rely on. Let me say that in plain English. So first and foremost, neighbors come to get trusted information. Nextdoor is a great place to come to find out how you stay safe. They come to give and get help. So you might want to find that local plumber, that local small business. Nextdoor neighbors are an amazing way to find out what's best in your local community. And then finally, they come to build relationships online, but to take them into the real world. Nextdoor is founded on this idea of place, which is different from other social media networks. We expect that when you get together on Nextdoor, you are going to take it out into a running group, a book club, mom's club, maybe something around your local business. So as you know, and my accent used to be better, I grew up in Northern Ireland, and it was all about community. My mom was the local nurse. My dad was the local personnel manager. I grew up in this tiny little village. We grew up during war, like real social unrest, but it was the community coming together that got us through those tough times. And so I always wanted to build something that could effectively take what I saw my mom and dad do and see my neighbors do and see if we could build that to scale in a global way.
That's super powerful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
So I know the pandemic, political unrest has created a lot of concerns for small businesses. What can small businesses do to mitigate risk to their daily operations?
Yeah, it's a really volatile time, whether you're the biggest business in the world or someone who's really doing a side hustle. And there's good news and bad news. I think first you need to prepare. So you need to know your financials. That's always my rule one. I'm an ex CFO. I'm like, do you know what's going on with your balance sheet? Do you know what your expenses look like? And if that's not your jam, go find an expert who can do that for you. There's great resources, like you can get a consultant in, you can get a part time controller. There's all sorts of ways to go about doing that. Second thing is you really need to understand your customer and make sure you're talking to them frequently. So I saw some great examples when the pandemic started. One of the local coffee shops here, she had to close down. So she needed to tell her customers, here's why this is happening, but I'm moving online. And so they were willing to support her in that move. So be agile, be flexible. So know your numbers and then be willing to be agile. And then finally, certainly for me as a leader, it's all about leading with transparency. Yeah. Be really open and honest, whether it's your employees, your customers, your investors. I would bring them on that journey with you. Don't feel like you need to be the strong person in the room that's holding up everything. I would bring them along because they will help you, in particular with your employees. If they're worried, if they're concerned, you need to let them know, yeah, times are not that great, but here's how you could help. With your customers, if you're having to raise prices because of inflation, let them know that's why that's happening. It's not just that you've decided, you need to retire a year earlier. It's actually that your costs have gone up. And I think if you do those three things, know your numbers, be agile, be flexible, and be transparent, you'll find that people really will rally around you.
I love that so much. I mean, especially when you mentioned the e-commerce part, because it does give you access to new customers, right?
It really does.
And I know that supply chain risks have really been a recent concern due to the pandemic, rising costs of goods. It's really important to have a supply chain and distribution strategy in place as a small business. Do you have any tips and tricks there?
Yeah. I think when you are a smaller business, big phrases like supply chain sound like they happen to other companies, but maybe not to your candle company, for example. But absolutely right now, you need to be conscious and cognizant of these elements of your business. So number one, are you only sourcing from one supplier? If so, you're leaving yourself open to a lot of risk. There's risk just first of all that their pricing is going to go up and you have no way to negotiate. Second is we've all seen how much supply chains can get disrupted, particularly during COVID. And so having a second or even a third supplier in place, incredibly important. Second part is maybe you need to think about your ingredients over a longer time frame. Later, I think we're going to go talk to Michelle Pisateri, Nana Joe's Granola, one of my favorites. And Michelle's going to talk about buying ahead. Now, buying ahead might sound obvious, but if you think about what buying ahead is going to mean, number one, more costs up front. Yeah. So now you might need to get more financing in order to be able to buy up front. Number two, where are you going to put all the stuff that you're buying up front? You need to figure out storage, particularly if you're in the food space. You're going to have to think about just some of the health concerns that can go around storing food over the long run. And then the final thing on supply chain for me is making sure that you really understand how that's going to play back through your financial model. So again, most companies don't go out of business because they're not profitable or going to make a profit. They usually go out of business because their cash flow gets mismatched to their costs that are going out the door with when their revenue is going to come in that door. And this is something I often see when I'm consulting with small businesses, when I meet them through Ladies Who Launch, is they have an idea of what that overall P&L, profit and loss account, looks like, but they don't have a really good sense of the timing, and that's where they can get into trouble. So in terms of supply chain, make sure you know who your suppliers are and where your risk might lie. Be creative. Think about ways that maybe you could buy ahead. And then, of course, make sure you're matching your costs and your revenue and that your cash flow is going to work for you and your business.
That is such helpful information because I know once you have a supply chain strategy in place and you've diversified your supply chain, that can give you a really competitive advantage, which is so critical to small businesses. So You mentioned Ladies Who Launch and resources and funding, and we all know that access to capital is one of the greatest challenges that small businesses face, especially if we're going to have a recession. It becomes even more critical. What resources are available out there for small businesses to have get access to capital and maybe apply to a grant?
Yeah, so with Ladies Who Launch, which is the nonprofit I co-founded, we actually funded it around that as one of the biggest problems small businesses face. And it depends where you are in your life cycle as a business. If you're just getting started, let's be honest, you're probably funding it yourself. You're bootstrapping it. You've maybe worked, you've created a nest egg, and now you're putting that to work. And maybe you're going to friends and family. And that's completely a good way to start to build your business. You have to be scrappy, you have to hustle. And certainly in these times, I would go back through every cost and really say, do I need it? And do I need it right now? As you start to grow, there are other avenues that open up to you. Certainly in the beginning, there can also be grants that can be available. Ladies Who Launch is a good example. We have a grant program. We wish it were bigger, but it's a grant program that brings not just money, but it also brings a lot of education and a lot of community. We put you in a cohort with women that are just like you, women and non-binary individuals just like you. But there are also grant programs depending on where you live. We did a great program back in the day in St. Louis, and St. Louis actually has a set of grants called the Arch Grants. They're government run, but they're a great way to get access to capital, particularly if you're starting, running, or growing your own business. From there, of course, you can move up into things like debt. So you might want to go talk to the bank. You might want to go talk to the SBA. What you're going to find is they're going to ask you about your revenue. And if your revenue is not at a certain level, it's going to be hard for them to fund you. But if you're at that point in your life cycle, that's absolutely another good place to go for funding. The SBA in particular has a lot of resources that go far beyond just the money, but into some of the stuff I was talking about earlier, right? How do I create my financials? How do I think about a balance sheet? They've got a lot of great education resources. And then finally, and that's why I started with the life cycle of your company, if you think you're a company that really wants to go bigger, you might want to say, do I want to sell some equity? That's your ownership in your company. And that's where you start to talk to folks like Series A, angels, maybe all the way up into venture capital. And that's when you get a lot bigger. If that is the path you want to be on, I would start early and often, because you will find you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find that VC or that angel investor that's going to come through for you. It's not just usually because they met you. It's usually because you've had multiple years even of interacting with them. I've raised a lot of money myself for the various companies I've been at, and it's usually come from longer term relationships. And people invest in people more so than even any business idea. So they need to get to know you to understand what you're great at, how you're building a team around you, and that's how you'll tip that sort of investment.
That's such a holistic approach, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I know grants can sometimes be a short-term solution, and venture capital can often be very competitive, right? Yeah. So what can small businesses do to access new customers if they can't maybe perhaps get that grant? And how can they really just raise awareness of their brand overall? I think that's one of the greatest competitive advantages that small businesses have is their brand story and why they even have a business. So I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, absolutely. We just did a survey at Nextdoor on small businesses because we view, when small businesses thrive, the community thrives. So this is a big part of our neighborhood too. And one of the things they said looking into 2023 is because they were tightening their belts, the number one way they felt they would grow was getting free, maybe earned media would be a phrase we would use, but how do you get your name out there? Can you maybe get a local news station to pick it up? And free social media as well. It's another great way to do it. Again, your customers talking about your product is always the most potent way to sell. Far more potent than anything you will ever say about your product is how do you get your customers to kind of pull that forward for you. And so when I think about consulting or helping a small business on that front, I would say look very closely, first of all, what is your brand strategy? And how do you keep a through line that is really bright so people always know what you stand for? But then how do you take anecdotes or moments in time where you're like, wow, that's a great story about my business? Again, to go back to Michelle, who we're going to meet, through her grant with Ladies Who Launch, we were able to pair her to United, the airline company. And what I love about this is many of these bigger companies actually have diversity targets in their supply chain, back to supply chains, where they know they want to go out and buy from minority businesses. So you may not even realize, but that's something they need to do, and you're there to offer it to them. But then you start to create this cool story, right? So Michelle's going to show up in the lounge here in SFO with her amazing granola product. So she's going to be seen by thousands, maybe millions of people flying through SFO. And that makes for a good local news story. So that's something I think small businesses often don't think about. But is there a way for me to show up in a local context? I mean, of course, I would say, go back to Nextdoor too. But there's a really cool way often to end up in the local paper, on the local TV station, again, and then clip that, right? Remember, the world of social media today, I call it the create once, put everywhere strategy, COPE. So once you have a little clip or you have a little piece of content from your customers, don't just do one and done. Think about ways that you could promote that multiple times. So there's lots of avenues for you that can be free before you need to spend even that first dollar on marketing.
Yes, I really like that because it's creative. And sometimes paid marketing there's not going to be an ROI there. So I really think that it's important to get earned media versus paying for marketing. And I'm really excited to try her granola and really learn more about how she's succeeded as a small business. And so thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And of course, anything to do with small businesses is always near and dear to my heart. So I'm all in.
We're back live in the studio. It was great to have time with Sarah. She has an extremely tight schedule, as do all of us, and is so dedicated to supporting small business efforts. She'll be joining us later in the program. We have some good questions coming in for the Ask Me Anything session already. Here's a quick look at what's up next. In 30 minutes, you'll join a small group discussion with your peers on Brain Date. Select a topic to share knowledge and ideas, gather input, and make new connections. Then, in 60 minutes, Sarah and our next speaker, Michelle, will be joining us live for the Ask Me Anything Q&A session. You can submit questions via the Q&A function at any time for review by our panel. Up next, she's joining us from just down the street in the Dogpatch neighborhood of San Francisco, an accomplished chef, owner, and founder of Nana Joe's Granola. Please welcome Michelle Pusateri.
Hi.
Michelle, welcome.
Hello. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us for our very first Founders Table.
I know, so exciting.
I think the last time I saw you, we were both wearing hairnets and joking about your Stevie Nicks oven.
Yes, I think we were. I think you're right about that.
I would love for you to share with the audience your founder's story. How long have you been a business as Nana Joe's?
Yeah, so we started in 2010. I started making granola before that and really wanted to, I joke around that granola found me because it really did. I wasn't looking to start a granola company. And I started in 2010 and I started making granola because I met somebody online, a website called Fitness Singles.
I love that.
Back in the day, like 2008. And I wanted to learn how to surf. And so I started going out surfing and realizing that in the middle of my surf session, I was completely crashing out. The last place you want to crash out in the Pacific Ocean. It was terrible. So I thought, you know, what am I eating? How am I nourishing myself? So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna make my own granola because we were eating granola and yogurt going surfing at like 5 a.m. And I started playing around with recipes. I'm a trained pastry chef. So I was like, why am I not making my own anyway? So I started realizing that I needed protein, fat, and fiber to really fuel me in these long surf sessions and really like keep me motivated and going. And so I made the Sunset Blend, which was our first blend. It was pecans, which are my favorite thing, mulberries, and coconut. And I started making that, and I realized that my friends and family really loved it. And everybody's story goes this way, where your friends and family love it, and you think, oh, this actually could be a business. And so that's kind of how it got started. I was a pastry chef, at the time at a place called Nopalito, which was right next door to Filetti's, which is a local grocery store. And I got super lucky with that because I was able to go, when I started, directly on shelf because I already knew the people. And that kind of started Nana Joe's Granola.
That's amazing. So it sounds like Nana Joe's Granola came out of both a need as well as a passion, and I love that you leveraged your background as a pastry chef to really drive the product that you create with Nana Joe's Granola, which is amazing. I am curious though, you know, you mentioned starting off your business, but what have been some key milestones in your growth? Like, at what point did you start hiring people? How did you identify products?
Yeah.
Let's know.
Those are great questions. We started out at farmers markets and it was just me making it. I had rented a kitchen at the Jewish Community Center here in San Francisco, and I started making the granola there. And it was a pack in, pack out situation, which meant that every single ingredient that I put into the granola and everything had to be brought in and then brought out. So it got pretty tricky, but I basically just started doing that. And then my key moment was deciding to build out a facility because that allowed me space, that allowed me time, and that allowed me the availability to order ingredients in bulk to get my costs down. And that was in 2012 when I built out the facility here in the Dog Patch.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
At what point did you ever hire a financial advisor or a business consultant?
So I had a lot of friends, and I still have a lot of friends who help out and mentors. But I hired on, probably in like 2013, I hired on a team of accountants and business finance people to kind of help me grow the business and figure out how I needed to grow the business. And I've been working with them ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. So you mentioned building the warehouse.
Sure.
And I'm curious, like, what led up to that demand? Like, how did you fuel the demand that basically required you to expand your footprint a little bit more?
We noticed quickly that stores were wanting our granola, but with a pack in and pack out situation, I really couldn't do it. And then I went to another communal kitchen, and it had just too many people. I couldn't get time. My stuff was like not properly stored, or people were taking stuff. And I just realized that like I needed a bigger space, and I just wanted to make that leap. That demand was there. More stores were wanting us. We started with Filetti's, and then we went to Buy Right and Canyon Market. And I just had a feeling, like I had this like feeling that if I do it, if I build my granola field of dreams, people will come. And that's what I did.
You're so resilient. I love it so much.
Yeah.
And I know along the way you've managed to get into Whole Foods.
I have.
I'm curious, how has Whole Foods helped fuel your growth?
They've helped fuel our growth tremendously. So they do these vendor summits before, like pre-pandemic, where they would have a lot of vendors come to a summit where a lot of the staff would talk and a lot of the team leaders would talk, and my buyer happened to be there. And I was already selling a couple of SKUs, which is like the Sunset Blend and the Cluster Blend in Whole Foods. And I ran into my buyer, her name was Jeanette, and I was like, Jeanette, hey, you know, what do you need on the grocery store shelf? How can I help solve a problem for you? And that helped and was one of the biggest turning points of our company, because I was able to launch the two paleo SKUs, the paleo orange and the paleo cranberry. And she said to me, she's like, well, I have a little bit of an issue. The local granola company that was making the paleo blends actually went out of business. And I need 2 paleo blends, but I need samples on my desk by Monday. And this was Thursday. And I was like, oh, okay, we can definitely do this. So the paleo orange was something that I was already making. I was putting it on salads, putting it on soups, putting it on roasted vegetables when I'd go over to a friend's house. And, you know, my friends were always like, this is really delicious. You should put it on your line. And in my head, I'm like, nobody's going to buy it because it's not sweet. It's not that like sweet, sugary granola that people are used to. It's more of like, kind of like a snack than a granola. And so I already had that one. And then I was like, okay, I'll do like a cranberry. And I got her 2 samples, and we launched within, I think, 6 to 8 months after that. And when those launched, we saw a spike in our oat blends, our original blends, that we hadn't ever seen before because people were looking at our brand differently. And I think partly it was the branding, but I think also it was the fact that we had paleo SKUs, and households probably were a little bit divided back then on whether they were eating carbs or not eating carbs. So it tremendously helped. But I think it was that pivotal moment of me like taking a step back and realizing that it was a relationship. And when you stop and take that beat, you realize that there are human beings on the other side who are buying the product and making those connections and really solving a pain point for somebody that she didn't have to go out and look was big for us. It was really big for us.
That's really interesting. And I want to continue on the same topic of growth, because every small business is always looking to grow, right?
Yeah.
As you know, Sarah is the co-founder of Ladies Who Launch, and Amazon is excited to just start a partnership with Ladies Who Launch as well. And I know Ladies Who Launch has greatly contributed to your growth too. So I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about that.
I love Ladies Who Launch. It's incredible. I mean, it's like getting together with a bunch of like-minded entrepreneurs and really talking deep. And nothing is like, when you talk to your friends about your business, it's much different than when you talk to a group of women. And the group of women that were, curated and brought together for the cohort that I was in are amazing. And we still have meetings once a month with 4 of the other people that were in my cohort. But they've really helped my growth. I mean, that grant helped me and allowed me to get more inventory, which was big for me at the time, because at that point, prices were increasing with the pandemic, and I didn't know which way was up or down. And I think that was a really big pivotal point for me going into Ladies Who Launch, and plus being able to talk with Sarah and like have those meetings and have those retreats where you sit and talk with other business owners and women who have driven some pretty phenomenal success with companies.
Yeah, you touch on so many good points about community being one of them, and I know Sarah and I talk about community as well, and how great that Ladies Who Launch provides that, and that's really what we're hoping to achieve here through Founders Table, is providing that community. And I know that Sarah and I recently had a chance to visit you at your facility.
You did.
And I would love to share with our audience exactly, our visit.
Oh my goodness, how are you? I cannot believe, after all the time we've known each other, that I've never made it into Nana Joe's. Okay, now, hairnet 101.
Perfection. So good.
Thank you.
So good.
Wonderful. Well, are you going to show me around?
So excited you're here.
Me too.
So this is Nana Joe's granola, and this is our warehouse. So this part over on this side is where we do all the packaging.
Got it.
So we have all of our finished products that go to stores and then direct to consumer. We have our fulfillment area where we pack all of the boxes. We don't have a 3PL, so we fulfill every order that comes into our website and on Amazon. And then over here, we have all of our products for distribution. So this goes to our distributor and then goes to Whole Foods. And
it's so cool to see the scale, because I feel like when we first met, I see the granola bar, but now I see all these boxes that are going to go. Do these all go out the door today?
These will, most of these will go out the door on Thursday.
Okay.
What we really, really want is the freshest granola on the grocery store shelf.
Yeah.
So when it hits those shelves, it's probably been packed maybe a week or 2.
Okay.
So our distributor also carries a minimal amount as well. So there's not a lot of back stock.
And look at this. I could not work here because I would eat everything, and it smells ridiculously good. I recognize this from the packaging. This is your mom and dad? Or tell me some more.
It is. So this is a picture of my mom and dad in November of 1967.
Wow.
It's an old Polaroid, and it's them on my grandmother's plastic-coated couch in Oak Brook, Illinois.
We all had one of those.
On their 3rd date.
Oh, wow.
So I loved it because when I first started Nana Joe's, I really liked the fact that they just look so happy.
Yeah.
And this is the feeling that I want people to come away from when they have like a bag of Nana Joe's or they have the Sunset Blend for breakfast or a granola bar, is that feeling of just like
pure fulfillment and pure joy.
And when Abby and I were talking earlier, we
Sure.
were talking about community
Yeah.
and the importance of getting your brand out there authentically,
Yeah.
getting it into a community that really cares about what you care about. And I
Yeah.
think this comes through so strongly when I see your packaging on a shelf, when I lift a bar out of my pantry to eat. I feel that soul.
Yeah.
And this is brilliant. Thank you for
awesome.
sharing. Hi.
Hi, Sarah. What did I miss?
Oh, you missed a great story here, let me tell you. But I'm going to let you two run with it. I have to run off, unfortunately, but you've got so much more of this story to hear. Michelle, thank you for having me.
Oh my God.
Okay, take care. Good
Hi,
luck.
Sarah.
Let me show you our new oven. It's right here. We call her Stevie Nicks. We do. She has a name.
Why Stevie Nicks?
I really like kind of rock and roll, like older rock and roll. So we have Patti Smith, Pat Benatar, and Joan Jett, like really powerful women, rock star energy. So we got this oven to increase our productivity when we were really hit by the supply chain and the costs. We were like, how can we change the price of our bag of granola? How can we be more efficient in our production? This is a double rack oven. These over here you have to kind of move in and out of. This is 30 sheet trays. This is 40 sheet trays. So now when we make granola, we used to make them in the 3 double stack ovens. And when we would make it, we'd start at 5 in the morning and then we would end at like 4:30 in the afternoon. And now we start at 5 in the morning and we're out of the oven by like 11 or 12.
Wow.
So we can increase our output by 70% just by getting this oven. And plus, like that wear and tear on our employees' bodies. They've been with me for a long time and I want to keep them for even longer.
That's amazing.
I know.
Thank you so much for sharing about the oven and how it helped you increase operations. I'd love to learn more about Nana Joe's granola.
Of course. Do you want to go sit down in the office and chat?
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
So, Michelle, as you know, today we're talking about navigating your small business during economic uncertainty. And it seems like you at Nana Joe's, you've survived the pandemic. You've done pretty well as a small business. And I'm curious, like, what are the challenges that you've had along the way, especially when it comes to, sourcing your products and maintaining your supply chain? I'd be curious if you have any tips to share.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there have been a lot of challenges over the last 3 years, and I feel like the hits just keep coming. But with the supply chain and our cost of ingredients from the end of 2019 to 2022 rising 52%. So last year, there was a heat snap in the Midwest. This crop yielded only 50% of what it normally yields. So who's getting the oats? Who got the oats are people who actually had the working capital and the cash flow to throw down $100,000 for a truckload of oats, which I don't have, and I also don't have the storage space for that. So I started looking at, okay, well, what can I do? I need to get the oats. I need to make sure. So I ended up getting a loan from the SBA for a truckload of oats. So I was able to secure oats at a certain price, but in that time period that was happening, that I was really looking at what exactly am I going to do, I was having to pay, starting at 93 cents per pound per oats, I was paying up to $4.87 per oats. $4.87 from 97, that's skyrocketed my cost of goods. And I could reformulate. I could change the list of ingredients to not be almond slices, which are super expensive, as the first ingredient. But I don't want to reformulate. People have really trusted our product for a long time, and I want each bag to be better than the last. And that's kind of what we're using that idle for, the idle loan that we got. And then I started thinking, well, what if I had, the oven that we put in? How is that going to increase our output, but still have the same overhead? Can I drop the actual labor and the margins in the bag for the labor? Can I do that to kind of help out with the price of the goods? So for each bag of granola. And then I thought, okay, so if I take the ounces of our oat blend bags where the oats are so expensive, and I take them from 14 ounces to 12 ounces, how is that going to affect it? So I was able to, we dropped down to the teens in our margins, and I was able to get it back into like the 20s to 30s. And we're consistently rising by doing all these little things. We have our bags as well. Like, can I print them and get more bags and print them roto instead of printing them digitally at 49 cents per bag and then going down to like 19 cents per bag? So those are all the things that I really worked on over the last couple of years, trying to make up for that, the supply chain break and the demand shock.
I admire your tenacity and your unwillingness to compromise your standards and the quality of your product, which is super impressive, as well as your resourcefulness in being able to see head on that the costs were going to rise. And this is what I need to do to be able to still source oats, right?
Yeah.
So this is super helpful, especially in these like economic uncertain times. I'm curious though, what is your long-term vision for Nana Joe's?
I see myself scaling for sure. I'd love to be in more regions of Whole Foods. I'd love to be national with Whole Foods. I mean, that's kind of my dream. But I'd love to be at that 5 million to 7 million mark. And we have the capacity in our warehouse to do that. We have the capacity in our warehouse to go probably up to 10 million, which is great because we don't have to build out any more infrastructure. We'll still have the same overhead. So kind of looking forward in that aspect too.
That's interesting. I know like you used to raise awareness of your brand at farmers markets.
Oh yeah. I did a lot of farmers markets. I spent so much time. I paid my dues.
And I love the story behind your company and your brand. And I'm curious, like how, as you think about your long-term vision and your plan to scale, how are you getting the word out? How are you raising awareness of your brand and your company?
Yeah, I think right now raising awareness of our brand through those collaborations with online influencers like Bakerita, like Star Infinite Foods. Both of those women are incredible. The recipes are awesome online, and being able to share Nana Joe's granola with their network, I think that's the way to do it. I've been doing this thing on our social media, and it's Women Supporting Women Wednesdays. Because I think word of mouth is everything. So, you know, I think the more that we, as a community, share each other's products, support each other's products, support locally, shop locally, even if you're paying just a little bit more if you can afford to pay it, I think that's where it's going.
And I love that you brought in the topic of community. I was talking about that with Sarah earlier. That's what we're trying to achieve through the Founders Table series, is just bringing small businesses together to find that supportive community.
Amazing.
Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
That was so much good information in the video, and I really enjoyed visiting your facility and learning more about your daily operations. I know when I was talking to Sarah, she mentioned the opportunity about you potentially being in the United Airlines lounge at the San Francisco airport, which is super exciting. I'm wondering if there's any updates on that.
Yeah, we actually just finished all of our compliance paperwork. A lot of people probably don't realize that you have to do a lot of compliance paperwork when you get into a new place. And we just finished that, and I'm hoping that maybe in the next couple of months. I haven't heard back, just submitted everything a week and a half ago. So we'll see what happens, but that's going to be super exciting to be in the United Clubhouses. I'm really stoked.
Yeah, and obviously, and hopefully maybe more airports and more lounges.
That's the hope.
As you continue to scale and grow.
Yeah.
Michelle, thank you so much for this conversation today. I know you're going to be joining us for the Ask Me Anything session, which I'm super excited about, but I really enjoyed our conversation, and I really want to thank you for being part of our first Founders Table.
Thanks so much for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. Now it's time for Ask Me Anything with our guests. You've met Michelle Pusateri, founder of Nana Joe's Granola, and now please welcome to the studio CEO of Nextdoor and co-founder of Ladies Who Launch, Sarah Fryer.
Great to see you both.
Welcome, Sarah.
How are you?
So good. How are you?
Great, thanks.
Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being at our first Founders Table.
Such a pleasure. Thank you. Really exciting to be here.
Yeah, we do have some amazing questions from the audience. So if we're ready, I'll just go ahead and
do it.
get us started. Okay. Our first question is, you talked about leveraging your brand story on social media and local media. How do you approach them with information about your business? Are there best practices?
Absolutely. So they are different, social media and local media. I think social media, first of all, I would think about the platform. Platforms are very different. They have a different group of users on there. So think about what you're trying to do. Of course, I'm going to talk about Nextdoor for just a quick second. Nextdoor is a great example of a very unique user base, right? It's your neighbors, it's the people in your community. And one of the things we know for sure is locals want to support their local businesses. They have got their pom-poms on. They want you to succeed, because when you succeed, the neighborhood looks better, feels better, it's way more vibrant, and they get to sing about how great you are. Like, I want to be in Michelle's neighborhood because I'd be talking Nana Joe's granola all day, every day. So that's kind of a good starting place on a platform like Nextdoor or an Instagram. You can obviously just start as a user yourself. You can talk about your business. And I would look for ways to actually not just try to be selling, but how can I actually be giving into the community? Because I think that's how you start to build a reputation. And then I think people want to come to you. There's one actually gentleman, I know we're talking a lot about women with Ladies Who Launch, but one gentleman always sticks in my head. He has a farm over on the East Coast of the United States. And he always says, he calls it the 4-in-1. So 4 times he posts about something interesting about the farm, right? It's calving. The calves are showing up right now. It's my Northern Irish accent coming into its own. Or, you know, here's what we feed, or there's wildflowers. So he's telling a community story. And then on the 5th one, he puts in, hey, do you know that we have organic beef? Here's our price point. Please shop local. So it's kind of this 4-in-1 strategy. And I think with other platforms, it's figuring out what works well on this platform. They all provide insights, so definitely go to the dashboard and experiment. Like, just like we do in bigger companies, experiment all the time, right? You know, sometimes something resonates. You may not even know why. It might just be of the moment. And then try to be, like, I find a little comedy, a little lightheartedness, a little of the moment, right?
Yeah.
Super Bowl's coming up, or the Grammys just happened. Like, is there something you can hook onto that's part of the cultural moment that makes you feel very relevant and much more like you're having a conversation? And then, of course, finally, you can get into like paid advertising, which is then one step up. That's going to boost your post. It's going to put it in front of more people. You need to figure out your budget to do that, when you most want to do that, but it can be a really then good way to be additive to that, what we would call organic, that starting point where you're showing up just as a neighbor, but now you're going to add on top of that with some paid marketing.
I love your point about giving back to the community too. That really resonates with me. So thank you.
And can I didn't get to the earned media or to newspapers.
Yeah.
Like, that's a little harder. Like, local news is going through its own kind of problems right now. That's why I think when you come to platforms like a Nextdoor or an Instagram or whatever, remember that you're getting to massive audiences at that point in time. But if there is a way to think about what's going on locally, you know, is there something that you can sponsor? Maybe it's T-balls kicking off. Can you be part of that moment? Like, local news will pick up on a lot of that stuff. They love good news stories. And so just inbounding and putting yourself out there, I mean, worst case, they say no, but they're always looking for good news, local stories, so don't be shy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Michelle, you've had good outcomes on this as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think a good question that I want to ask is what are the metrics? Like, how do you know it's working with the paid advertising?
Yeah. Yes.
I think that's a huge piece, especially for a small business who doesn't have the working capital to pay a lot for paid advertising and doesn't know exactly how to do it, because there's a point where you're just doing it and you're not seeing any return.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So impressions on that dashboard, always an easy starting point. How many people? An impression's just a person seeing it.
Yeah.
But then you can start to get a little bit more sophisticated, often on things like you're paying per lead that's generated.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, Is there a way, if you have an in real life business, is there a way to say, where did you find us? Because that starts to give you some signal. It's not perfect, but where did you find us? Did you find us on Nextdoor, right? Then you can even put like little couponing codes into paid marketing.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That is a great way to close that loop.
Yeah.
These are all excellent points. Marketing always seems to be a challenge, especially on social media. Okay, we have another great question. I think this is for you, Michelle. As a business owner, you take on so many big decisions. How do you balance that against finding time to step away and innovate or set big picture goals?
Yeah, I think, when I first started the business, like from 2010 until probably 2019, I was go, 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 do this, do that, go to the farmers markets, go to every event you're invited to, because that's how you build your marketing grassroots, is by going to every event you're invited to and really showing up. I think for me to find time for innovation and for me to find time to look at that bigger picture, I had to start taking the weekends off. I had to start really focusing in and giving myself and my brain time to spend with my husband out in the ocean surfing, or just giving myself a break from it, because I was doing way too much. And I think that's dedicating that time, and then also managing my time better, because once I was like, I'm not working weekends, it made me manage my time better. It made me look at like, what am I spending my time on during the day, and how can I like alleviate some of these stop starts when I'm working on tasks, to make sure that I have that time on the weekend for myself so I can actually grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I'm glad you have the surfing too, as a way to give you that respite from the rigorous daily grind of running a business. So those are excellent points. I think our next question might be for you, Sarah. What is the best way to vet a financial consultant? Should they have a certain skill set to not just establish systems, but help grow and track progress?
I'm taking notes.
Great question. So as an ex-CFO, my advice here is true whether I'm talking to people who run really big companies who come tell me what should I do for a CFO or a consultant, all the way down to the smallest of businesses. Now, how you implement is very different in both cases. But first of all, kind of take stock of what you need. Are you looking for someone that is more of an accountant, a controller, like a bookkeeper? Is that what you need? Because you can handle all the other stuff. You want to be able to do strategy and so on.
Yeah.
Or are you looking for a more strategic CFO, financial consultant? And so first of all, decide what you really want. How do you do that? I just go talk to lots of people in your situation and say, who do you use? What do you like? What do you get them to work on? And then start to think about how that fits in your organization, because knowing what you're looking for is a good starting point. From there, if you're in the former camp and what you're really looking for is just good accounting advice, there's lots of organizations out there. For Ladies Who Launch, we use, I think they're called Your Part-Time Controller, YPTC. They've been a great organization to work with, and they're really doing more basic bookkeeping. But to the question, we kind of said, okay, we need someone that can now go from not just closing our books every month and making sure, got our taxes in the right place, but now we want to look forward. Who can help us do 12-month progression forecasts and progressions, and 24-month even, like a multi-year? And so we can now actually purchase a little bit more time and a little bit more of that expertise. And that's a good way to do it without having to do the full-time hire, because frankly, we don't have enough work for a full-time hire, and we're a small 8-person organization at Ladies Who Launch. In the other camp, if your company's gotten a lot bigger, I personally highly recommend the kind of strategic finance person, because I think you'll be wowed by how much they will help really grow your business and create ambition for you. To your question to Michelle, how does she find time? She has to delegate. And if you have a really solid strategic finance person at your side, it's amazing how much you're going to be able to delegate to them. They're going to go hire underneath the people who are really great at accounts receivable, accounts payable, like all of the mechanics of basic finance. But really their value is going to come in that ability to look forward and say, okay, if this is our vision, here's what it could look like, here's the revenue we'd have to create, here's how we'd have to price, here's new markets we'd have to go into, and so on. Here's the costs if we want to do paid marketing, and so on. And it can help you iterate between the numbers back to the strategy. Okay, the strategy needs to get back into the numbers don't yet work, need to go back to the strategy. That iteration is so valuable, because then it's not just about the finance, it's about what's this amazing business I'm creating going to look like 1 year from now, 3 years from now.
Great point on delegation.
That is a great point.
It really is.
I do have a, can I ask
Yeah,
a
go
question?
for it.
So I have a question about hiring accountants, hiring a CFO. Do you think it's important to have that person be in your category or not? Like with consumer packaged goods, I was finding that with bookkeeping and people who weren't used to that, it was very difficult for me to get the results and like have the inventory, and it was confusing at the end of every close. So I'm curious what your thought is on that.
I do think it's great if you can get someone who's worked in and around the space that you're in, because you're right, accounting's different
For
in
every
industry.
AI and then
Totally.
inventory. It's so different.
Exactly.
My brother's like, what is all this? It's like,
Yeah.
Michael, you own a software company.
That's right. And a good, a finance person that understands your industry, like particularly it's something you're working in where you do have inventory, you have to buy ahead maybe in the supply chain, will probably pay for themselves almost immediately. Even like the sophistication of things like understanding taxes in a given jurisdiction, understanding what are credits I could go get. Like it's so particular to the business that you're in, the location that you're in, the type of workforce that you've built. But I think a really good finance person that's been there, done that, will just see a lot of that opportunity. And like I said, you think you're going to be paying this salary or you're going to be paying out to this organization. And yet what you get back more than makes up for it.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. All good points. I'm sure the audience finds this very helpful. Next question we have from the audience. Ooh, it's a data one. Okay, we love data questions. We want and need to start collecting more data on our audience. We've done a SurveyMonkey before, but not with a professional strategist. What is the next right step to grow our audience? I'll let either of you answer that.
Do you want to start with that? I think we've done the SurveyMonkey, and we've done like real time at farmers markets, like surveying our audience, and then reached out to a lot of folks that have bought from us on Shopify. But we haven't done like a professional kind of audit, and I'd love to know what you think.
Yeah, it's a hard one to know when is the right time.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Because the thing with all data problems is, frankly, you have to have enough data to make sure that when you start to crunch it, that you're actually going to end up with statistically significant, to use like a good techie phrase, data set. So part of it is you do have to be big enough. I think it's a great start to go out and do a SurveyMonkey or whatever platform you want to use, just to have a sense. I love just being able to find ways to talk to your customers, even in small ways. So Nextdoor, we have almost 80 million neighbors on the platform. I still try to do a neighbor roundtable every month. And I realized back in the day, I used to try to get like 8 to 10 people. That's crazy. You cannot manage 8 to 10 people around a table because one person's talking and 8 people are bored as hell. So now I do kind of 3 to 4, because if it's just one, it's a bit weird, but 3 to 4. And there's usually, I'm trying to discover something about the product, but really kind of going deep with them on what's working, how they're using it. I always have my magic wand, like if you had a magic wand and could change one thing about the product, what would it be? It's a good open-ended conversation.
That's a great question.
There's like a famous, the founder of Intuit, had this idea of follow me homes. It always sounded slightly stalkerish, but he literally would go watch people using Intuit QuickBooks software in their homes, and he would get his product people to do that. And it's been a style of how a lot of products have been built here in the Valley. Not every product lends itself to that. Like, Michelle, I don't know if you're watching me make my granola this morning. Would it been like good or bad? But just getting in the habit of talking to customers every single, whatever your periodicity is huge. And then finally, when you do get big enough to get that survey, there can be a lot of benefit in bringing someone in to do what marketers call segmentation analysis. And it's not it can sound simple like how many, male, female, age, demographic, but it's way more than that. It's usually like what's the what's the spirit of this person that's using my product, right?
Yeah.
Nextdoor, we broke it down into new movers, big segment for us. Millennial parents, huge segment. We call them rapid responders, people who tend to come out in an emergency from, a hurricane to a lost dog.
Yeah.
And once we started to cut it into 4 to 5 segments, because you certainly shouldn't have more than that, it gave us a way then to think about product build specifically for that core group.
Yeah.
It's not your whole customer base, but if you build for that core group, then hopefully there's enough that's happening that's working for then the broad mass of your customer base too.
When do you think you should do that? Like what size business?
It probably comes back, again, I think it's about customer scale. Like you have to have thousands, I think, of, in your business, I would think it has to be thousands of customers, right? If you are in a business where, every contract is $1 million, maybe it's 10 customers. So you have to decide a little bit, what's my scale factor there? But I do think that if you're going to go spend that money, that does start to get expensive.
It's cost prohibitive for a lot of businesses.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with small businesses is I love always the scrappiness. You and I talked about it a little bit earlier. Always look out for pro bono things. Right? There's in big marketing companies and so on, there's always those people who want to give back in their community. They love small businesses. Is there a way they would do a short pro bono study for you, or at least give you some of the guardrails of how to do it?
That's a great idea.
Go make the ask. Like, find some people in marketing and see if someone will give you an hour or two of their time.
Yeah.
I love that, because you won't know unless you make the ask, right?
Yep.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Sarah. Our next question from the audience, Sarah mentioned the United partnership with Michelle, that the corporation was required to have minority or local business representation. How can we learn more about unique opportunities where we might fit in?
Do you want to, did you find out about United through Ladies Who Launch, or
Yes,
did you?
it was through Ladies Who Launch.
Okay.
Yeah, but it also was being WeBank or women-owned certified.
That was it, yeah.
So there's a certification process that you have to go through for any minority-owned business, and I think that's really important. But it's also like, it takes a long time, and that's how we kind of went through that. And once you're WeBank certified, you have the opportunity to get government contracts with your minority status. So
yeah, so that's a good point, because I'm really passionate about that for veterans getting certified as business owners, and I know that it opens up a whole plethora of opportunity once you do get that certification, because there are companies that do have supplier diversity requirements where they need to be able to purchase a certain amount from, underserved populations. Right? So that's a really good point. I like that.
And then with the WeBank, you can also find other companies who are WeBank certified to work with. Like, say I need a supplier of boxes. Is there a WeBank certified company in the Bay Area that I can work with? And you build a network in that way. I think it's incredible.
Okay.
So just check, like, generally speaking, figure out what is your uniqueness, like what's your point of differentiation. Find these organizations that do the accreditation. WeBank, great example for women, non-binary individuals, but Black-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, LGBTQ+-owned businesses, right? These exist, and typically once you go through the accreditation, they'll have a list then of how to get back into that supply chain.
Right.
Most businesses in the U.S. at any scale now absolutely have quotas that they're trying to fill. Some of it's part of their ERG efforts, their social responsibility. So you're actually helping them because they're desperate to go find these great suppliers. So don't be shy about that. But it definitely takes a period. It's going to take, like, how long did it take you to get accredited? A year?
No, it took us 4 months.
4 months.
But
Okay.
there's some
that's
people
good.
it takes a year. It all depends on whether or not you have all of your paperwork. Because it is a lot of submitting for that.
Yeah,
and then coming back to when you get on then media like social media and so on, there's always like badging. There's really good things you can do to put that in front then of your community and look for moments in time, right? March is Women's History Month. So when people are always looking for like, oh, I want to lean in, this power of my wallet. We're in Black History Month right now. So, it can feel performative and frustrating sometimes, but honestly, as a small business, just hustle. Like, if those opportunities are coming to you, like lean in.
That's a great idea.
Corporates want to do
I
all
hadn't
of
thought
it.
about that for marketing.
Yeah, and I
We
think
could
like
sit here all day.
I know we could sit here all day. I was going to say, like, people too want to purchase from small
Yeah.
businesses and underserved businesses. And I
Yeah.
know, like at Amazon, for example, we recently launched the Black-owned business badge, and we have the small business badge.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense to get that certification. But
100%.
you mentioned like there's obviously different requirements depending on what type of certification it is. So.
And the organization
Yeah.
too may not require the certification,
Yeah.
but it all depends on that. You just need to put yourself out there and apply and start looking
Yes.
for opportunities, I think.
Absolutely.
So I think the consensus here is to encourage certification to our audience. I love it. I love it. Okay, our next question from the audience is, Founders Table is about building community, and my brain date group was about creating a team or circle of connections. Can you speak to the types of people you connect with on a regular basis for guidance and inspiration?
I want to hear your answer and then I'll answer.
So I am a huge fan of peer mentorship.
Yes.
What I found, like one of the reasons we founded Ladies Who Launch was this finding that women in particular, women and non-binary entrepreneurs would walk into a room and couldn't find their people in a way. And
Yeah.
giving them the ability to connect in a community that looked like them, that had lived through a lot of their shared experiences, was just a game changer. So for me personally, I absolutely have a friends and family group that I turn to. I often talk about my mentors in kind of 4 quadrants, and I would say the people I turn to probably in those 4 quadrants. There's always like the people that are in your business today. Like I can get mentorship at work, even from my peer group at work. But then there's the people that you've connected with in a working environment before. I have a phone a friend group of CEOs. They know who they are. They're not all women. It's just a whole mishmash of probably 4 to 5 people that I will call with, how are you dealing with, shaping work the future is what we call it at Nextdoor, of like this hybrid work environment that we're in. I've been on the phone with them a lot talking about that recently. There's a third group, I'm in a quadrant of 4, which I call like the people who always tell you the truth tellers. So my husband, my best friend, like they kind of see through it all and they're like, that's crazy. You
Yeah.
cannot do that, or do not do that, or whatever. They're really good truth tellers. And then the final group for me is always this inspirational moment where is there someone in your network that you think they would never take a call with me, but you're going to give it a try.
Yeah.
I have 2 mentors in my life that kind of changed the course of my career because I never thought they would be willing to do that quick one-on-one. In one case, it was actually the head of the big company I was working for. The only way I could get time on her calendar was literally to ride in a cab in Manhattan from downtown to midtown. She had 20 minutes. I came with exactly what I needed. So don't do a mentor me moment.
Yeah.
Come with real hard
Yes.
questions and then follow up. And I think those communities are vital to you as an individual and then to your company to help your company thrive.
Yeah, that's great.
Did you want to add to
who's
that?
your group?
Oh, I have a lot of groups, Ladies Who Launch. So
Great.
in our cohort, we have 4 businesses now. It was our accountability group that grew to 4 and 5 now, actually. And we talk once a month.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it's like you have the opportunity to do that. And then another one, a group of us met at an OSC retreat, which is Organic Sustainable Community. It's another organization that I belong to. And we all got into the hot tub at night, and we ended up calling it Founder Soup. And we talk once a month as well. But those are people that we are on text groups where I can be
Yes.
like, Arshelle, I text,
Yeah.
Laura, Mickey is a great one.
Yeah.
And then also just like really having mentorship. And I was set up with a mentor through Organic Sustainable Community, and it's been a game changer for me. And that was just like reaching out and doing that work of not just going to it, because I think a lot of times with mentorship, when people come to me for mentorship, I'm always like, I need a list of questions.
Yeah.
Email
Making
them
me
to
work
me.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not going to run your business.
No.
And I think that's the confusion with mentorship. They are
Yeah.
not there to run your business. They are there to help advise you and give you direction. And I think with your peers, you have that. And I have the trust too of those folks that I call. One of them, I used to work at his restaurant. I was his pastry chef for a little bit, and I call him. because he's given it to me honestly, you know.
Exactly.
And he won't candy coat anything. And I need that because there's so many people in your life who want you to succeed so badly that they'll candy coat everything, even if your business is like just blew up. They'll be like, it's not so bad. You're like, no. You know, so you definitely need that. So those are my groups. But I think putting yourself out there is so huge. You have to put yourself out into the world. You have to, but you also have to, like, when you take, you have to give.
Yes.
And I think that's really important to kind of mention here, especially for new entrepreneurs who just, you know, want all this information and are, you know, reach out, email people, but make sure that you're giving back. What can I do for you? Even if you know that I do that to my mentor. I'm like, what can I do for you? She's like, I don't know, Michelle. What can you do? But I'm like, I can give you granola.
Don't knock
I can
it.
feed you. Yeah, but I think that that's important to know those boundaries when you're going into any sort of mentorship or being a mentee or a mentor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think it's important for the mentee to drive the relationship so much, and for us to not just have mentors, but be mentors to other people ourselves.
Shine that spotlight behind you. I think that's one of the biggest things. Even if you're small and you went over one hurdle, shine that spotlight. I mean, we're all trying to succeed and do the same thing. And if you take away that equation of competition and wanting to be secretive about everything you're doing, you miss out on all these opportunities. Like one granola company that I talked to when I was starting up went out of business. I got their business, you know, and that's just because I reached out and I was like, hey, you're doing the same thing I'm doing. And sometimes you get people who aren't going to be responsive to that, but it's really important to kind of build a network and put yourself out there.
I agree, 100%.
So
Putting
important.
yourself out there.
It's hard. It's hard as heck. Because
It
then you're
is
like,
hard.
especially when you need help with your business.
Yes.
And you're like in this position where you're like make or break. And you're like, I'm too nervous to reach out to people because I don't want them to know that I'm not succeeding. But that's what's going to make you grow. Those failures really make you grow and make you learn how to run your business.
Yeah, being vulnerable enough. It's actually why I think it's good to have a community of people who are at least somewhat like you.
Yeah.
Having just done a phone a friend around 3 CEOs was something I was grappling with. It made me smile afterwards because the guy was like, well, I don't really have that problem because my business has been doing so well. And I was like, no, it hasn't. I look at your numbers too. And then the woman was like, she's like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I cannot believe I'm doing this anymore.
Yeah.
But then we got into it and I was like, oh wow, she's been way more thoughtful. She's done all this work. And so you have to kind of remember that everyone's got their poker face on.
You have to.
But if you do two clicks back, we're all struggling with a lot of the same stuff right now, right? We're all living in an economy that's getting worse. We have inflation going up. We're worried about employees and wages and so on. So we've all got something going on.
100%. 100%. I really like this next question. I think it'd be great if both of you could answer.
Sure.
What is the best business advice you ever received and why?
Ooh.
I'm going to go after Sarah.
Might be the best business advice. I'm always going to go after the other person. The best business advice. I think it is, well, one thing, as Michelle was talking about shining the spotlight behind, a phrase I love is like, when you get that seat at the table, sit down, look back, turn around, and grab a chair for someone else.
Oh, that's
and
great.
Why I love it is on multiple fronts. Number one, it is a reminder that, frankly, helping other people has only ever helped me. And I mean that in a hopefully doesn't sound too selfish way, but it just always comes back. I'm a big believer in karma. The people I've helped along the way, they go on, they do amazing things, and suddenly they're there for me. Yeah. So that pay it forward has always helped. Number two, it's so much more fun when the table starts to be diverse. So we should be doing that. And I think number three, it's about what fills your soul. Like in these moments, resilience is a word I keep coming back to. Yeah. You can work very long hours and you can forget why you're showing up sometimes because you're just a slave to I've got to make the revenue number, I've got to make the cost-based work, I've got to hit the deadline. And you've kind of forgotten the whole reason that you were really excited about why you were doing something. Yeah. And so I find that paying it forward is a really resilient resilience building moment for me. So, if you get a seat at the table, sit down, grab a chair, and pull someone else up.
I love
that. So,
and I have been pulled up to the table because of you. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ladies Who Launch.
Thank you.
Really, you created something super magical, and I'm like getting teary-eyed. I'm so grateful, because this is an example of what you're talking about. You're actually doing what you're saying you're doing.
Yep.
I think one of the pieces of advice that I would give when you're starting is have a plan. Know what you want to do with your business. Know what your end game is. Your end game can always change, but know what that end game is, because with that end game, you can start building that platform. What do you need? Like my end game, I didn't have an end game. I just wanted to sell a little granola on the side, and here I am,
now
right?
It's a whole business.
Yeah,
That's
but
amazing.
and I didn't have that, and now I'm having to kind of backtrack. Like, how would I have started my business differently? Would I have taken funding if I would have known? If I wanted to be national within 3 years, which isn't possible just solely on grassroots marketing.
Yeah.
So having that plan, I think, would be my biggest piece of advice. Because you can find the funding, you can do all of the things that you need to do if you know what your end game is going to be. My end game has changed 1,000 times, and it'll continue to change. But what holds true is being in Whole Foods nationwide. I mean, that has been my dream from the beginning. And without having that plan, I kind of lost track of it. And now I'm kind of going full circle back to it and really building that structure for it. And I think another really good piece of advice I'm going to do too is this community thing, really opening yourself up, being vulnerable, understanding that, people are people, and those relationships that you built, people aren't around you and your business to serve you. You are there to serve them.
Yeah.
And I think keeping that in mind has probably really been key for me, because that's what my father, that was his example growing up. He was always the one pulling out the seat. I mean, I don't know how many people were brought to our home for dinner growing up.
Lovely.
But yeah, it's just the way that I learned it, and I think that's what I would say.
I feel like you both could have served in the military, because you've brought up so many great key points about, giving back to your community and just really paying it forward. And Michelle, I love your point about it's almost like you're working backwards from an end game, which in a way is almost Amazonian.
Yeah.
So I love that so much. This has been such a great discussion. I think this is all the time we have for questions, right? So
great.
Let's hear it for our speakers, everyone. Please show your appreciation in the emojis. On behalf of everyone with a seat here at Founders Table and with the Amazon Small Business Academy, thank you both for your time and your expertise today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It was amazing.
To our viewers, don't go anywhere. We have a new resource to fuel your business. We hope you gain new insights and ideas and inspiration from today's Founders Table. We leave you with one last resource, the new Amazon Small Business Academy portal at smallbusiness.amazon. It's everything for small businesses all in one place, including a recording of today's Founders Table webcast, available in a couple of weeks. The Amazon Small Business Academy, or ASBA as we call it, is a web portal of free interactive resources to help support entrepreneurs from concept to launch and beyond. ASBA offers access to foundational business education, industry experts, and inspiration that will help aspiring and current small business owners accelerate their success in launching a digital business. There's 3 new self-service educational tracks, Start, Build, and Launch, which offer a customizable experience based on where you're at in your entrepreneurial journey. Or you can access the classroom, which is tailored by business stage and features live and on-demand learning content with Q&A opportunities, downloadable toolkits, short-form video content, and live office hours. Audio content via the This is Small Business podcast unpacks key business decisions in a small business owner's journey to success. And there's live engagement opportunities with Founders Table, which, as you know, explores different topics from the unique perspectives of business experts and small business owners through fireside chats, case studies, and more. It's free to create an account at smallbusiness.amazon. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our next Founders Table is set for early summer. We'll send a brief follow-up email with a quick survey. Please take a moment to share your thoughts to ensure we deliver the content you need to launch and grow your business. From everyone here at Amazon, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Founders Table.